expectations the enemy? All right, let's be real. How many of us have walked into a relationship expecting it to feel like a rom com, only to find up that it ended up more like a sitcom or even worse, a horror movie? Unmet expectations are relationship killers. Let's talk about how to manage them so we can build real, healthy, and satisfying connections. Grab a notebook or open up your notes app. We're diving deep today. Hey, nerdy minds, welcome or welcome back to Nerdy Psychology. I'm Dr. Angel, your resident psych nerd, here to break down the mental health and relationships in a way that's strength based, quirky, and most importantly, actually useful. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we're on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers. And I'd love for you to be a part of this nerdy, empowering community. Today, we're continuing our relationship challenge series with a juicy question. Are expectations the enemy? Spoiler alert, it's complicated. Expectations can, well, make or break a relationship. And today, we're diving into three big things you need to know. One, the role of expectations. Two, the clash of fantasy versus reality. And three, how to master healthy compromise. All right, let's get into it. The role of expectations in relationships. Expectations aren't inherently bad. They're like a user manual for relationships, kind of like guidelines on what we want, and what we need, and what we believe or what we think we deserve. But here's the problem: most people do not give their partner the manual. Instead, we assume they should just know what we need. Sound familiar? I had a friend, let's call him Jake, and Jake had this belief that if someone really loves you, they'll just know what you need without asking. So, well, when Jake's girlfriend didn't read his mind and surprised him with a birthday trip to the mountains, because, well, of course, that's what he thought she should do, he was devastated, completely shut down, and completely refused to do anything for his birthday weekend because he thought she really didn't love him because she didn't know that expectation he had. But guess what? She didn't even know that Jake liked the mountains and had no idea about what was really happening. Hmm. Expectations? Sky high. Communication? Non existent. And guess what that's a recipe for? Disaster. Let's have a takeaway from this. Expectations are helpful if they are communicated. I'm going to say that again. Expectations are only helpful if they are communicated. If your partner doesn't know the rules of the game, you cannot get mad when they don't play by them. It would be like bringing your deck of cards with a bunch of friends or family members or people in your world, and we're going to play a card game, except you don't tell them what card game you're playing and you start dealing games, and they're trying to play what they think of a card game, and you're playing what you think of a card game, and nobody's playing the same game, and everybody's just getting very frustrated with each other. Kind of like Monopoly. That's always a good one in this example because, Monopoly has been around for such a long time. And there's kind of like little families and pockets have their own Monopoly cultures, right? Like, does your family like give bonuses for free parking or what happens when you're in jail? And like, we've warped our rules over time of how to play Monopoly. Or are you the person that it's definitely to the written rules? And so when you sit down and play Monopoly with people, you have to kind of sit down and go, okay, how do you guys play it? What's the rules? What do we do? If we don't, we're all going to be playing a little bit different version, which of course gets frustrating. And it's the same thing. We cannot get upset if people aren't playing by the rules that we've never even told them exist. We set everything up for failure when that happens. Point two, adjusting to reality versus fantasy. Okay, now let's talk about fantasy versus reality. Raise your hand if you've ever fallen for the idea of someone rather than, the actual person. Most of us have. It's easy to create this dream vision of a partner in our heads, but the real person can never fully measure up. And that's where we get disappointment and it creeps in. Disney lied to us, folks. There is no happily ever after and living in the bliss of life. That doesn't exist. And when that's our expectation, it's a fantasy that will never be held up to. We will always feel that disappointment because that's not how life works. Meet Sarah. Sarah had a Pinterest board worthy dream of what her boyfriend would be: morning coffee dates, deep philosophical conversations at sunset, spontaneous weekend getaways. Reality, he was a chill, go with the flow guy who showed love in ways she didn't expect. Things like fixing her car or making her coffee before she woke up and always showing up when she needed him. But because he didn't match her fantasy, her blueprint that she had made for what a boyfriend should be, she thought he was, well, emotionally unavailable. The problem wasn't him, it was her expectations. The takeaway here is, if you're disappointed in a relationship, and it doesn't have to just be a romantic relationship, this can be a friendship or a professional relationship or a family relationship. I need you to ask yourself, am I upset because my partner isn't meeting my needs, or this person isn't meeting my needs, or because they're not matching this fantasy version I built in my head? Seriously, reflect on that. It's an important question to really look and reflect on for ourselves. Point three, healthy compromise. Okay, so how do we actually manage expectations in a healthy way? The secret sauce: compromise. Not in a lose yourself kind of way, but in a let's meet in the middle kind of way. Healthy compromise is about balance, not sacrifice. Quote, expectation is the root of all heartache. And you know who brought that to us? Mr. William Shakespeare himself, because our expectations set us up for this failure of whatever we're walking in. It's funny because I'll get people who will tell me they're planning a family trip or a weekend getaway with the girls or with their partner or whoever, and they'll describe what they need it to look like, they think it's going to look like, and we're going to get in the plane, or we're going to go and we're going to sing happy songs and go through the mountains, see beautiful scenery, and we're going to lay on the beach and have mai tais, whatever. We all have had these little fantasy expectations of an event, and the reality of it is maybe they get a flat tire on the way, or airplanes get delayed, or maybe the person they're traveling with wants to really just sleep in and rest and relax and isn't interested about sitting on the beach and sipping mai tais. The problem is those expectations set us up to feel so disappointed and failure. If failure in the event, then I'll see people get all moody and angry and frustrated and shut down. That is where I see a lot of people just shut down when those expectations aren't being met. How did you not? Why did you not? And we start feeling really hurt and resentful over time. Seriously, even Shakespeare knew there was a problem with expectations. Think of relationships like a road trip. One person loves fast food, the other prefers a sit down restaurant. A bad compromise: only eating at one person's choice. A healthy compromise: mixing it up, getting a little drive through some nights, and some nights having nice dinners at restaurants. It's not about winning, it's about adjusting so that both people feel heard, valued, and loved. Our takeaway in this is to ask your partner, your friend, your child, your coworker, whoever we're negotiating this with, is what are your non-negotiables? And where can we meet in the middle? Where do we have some flexibility? When one person is always giving it the other way, they feel invisible after time and they don't have their needs met. And some people may be especially in the beginnings of relationships, willing to sacrifice the things they love and value for the sake of the person in the relationship. But it's not sustainable, my friends. This is what makes those relationships grow more and more distant and unhealthy over time. We can't be invisible. We have to find out where we can meet in middles. Write it down, know about it. Everybody has those things, like these are things I can't negotiate on. And these are things that we should be flexible on, should be a ton of things. It was funny because I was like scrolling through, I don't know, some shopping site, and I've noticed there was this dice that had a set of dice that had, I don't know, a lot of different sides on it, maybe 8 sides on it or so. And on each part of this, it had like a different genre of food, and another one had like a different type of activity. And they were supposed to be like, date night dice where you throw it and one comes up with a type of food and the other one comes up with an activity, and it puts together a random idea to do for date night, which I thought was like super cool because it gets us out of our boxes a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's really important because we need to be able to work within that relationship and meet those compromises. So write them down. This is your relationship roadmap. If you have a person in your relationship, let's say, for example, they really hate Italian food. And guess what? Italian food is your favorite food. Well, this is going to lead either one person never eats the Italian food, which is their favorite food, because they want to not make someone else unhappy, or they always go pick Italian food and the other person doesn't want to eat dinner. And either way, both people are feeling really not okay. And here's the compromise. So I know you do not like Italian food. So maybe I get it with some extra friends that do and don't bring it into this friendship or relationship. And maybe you can compromise sometimes and we can go to an Italian restaurant and you can find something there that you may be able to eat, or bring something in with you. I've seen people do that before, or get it to go and get two different places. But finding those compromises really is what makes those relationships successful. And that's what we're really looking for. We have to get the relationships out of our idealized head. We have to get it into communication, into reality of where we are and what's really happening around us, because that's where we live. We do not live in fantasy land and dreamland. We live in reality of where, well, things happen randomly and come up all the time, and we have to have flexibility, but we also have to communicate. Okay, homework assignment. It is now your turn. So here's your homework challenge. Grab a journal and write down 3 expectations you have in relationships. Then ask yourself, have I communicated these clearly? Are these based on reality or fantasy? And where am I willing to compromise in these? Or am I willing to compromise in these? Drop a comment below and share one relationship expectation that you've had to adjust. Let's learn from each other. If this episode gave you a light bulb moment, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We're on our mission to hit 10,000 subscribers, and your support means the world to me. Share this video with a friend who really needs to hear it. And don't forget, new episodes drop every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. So hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. All right, nerdy minds. Until next time, stay curious, be kind, and keep your mind nerdy. See you next week.